it, they have other children. Inside of header, you have other children. So they are not just there. They are structured in an hierarchical tree, and that is the same thing that I'm depicting with this image. So you have document, you have HTML, you have head. So when you think of DOM, just see it as a way that your HTML, the way it is being structured in website. And even if you look at your code editor, so if you are using a code editor like Visual Studio and you have Prettier plugin installed, anytime you are writing something, so for instance, if I create a div here, I'm going to close that div. Inside of this div, if I want to create another div, you see that it's creating it inside it. So it's creating it inside it, not side by side. So as long as it is inside this element, it means it is a direct child of this element, and it is going to indent it. Indent is the space between this margin and this margin. So it's going to indent it to show that, oh, this particular div is a child of this div, because that is how the DOM is going to structure it when it wants to structure it. So it allows you to visualize the way DOM is going to structure it at the end of the day. So the DOM is just like is an interface for web documents. Web documents is your HTML file, and it represents how your HTML file is structured. So it is structured in an hierarchical tree. And those those hierarchies, they can then be manipulated by JavaScript. So the manipulation is what we want to talk about today. But before you understand manipulation, you have to understand what the DOM is. So if I say, oh, let's go and manipulate the DOM, let's go and add elements to the DOM. What I'm trying to say is, oh, we want to add elements to this thing that you are seeing here. So if we want to add an header to the DOM, so you are going to ask me, where exactly do we want to add it? Do we add it in the body, or we add it inside of this particular section? So that's in brief, that's what we meant by DOM, document object model. So here is a more detailed explanation. What it is. The DOM is essentially a way for web browser to represent the structure of the web page, like I said, HTML or XML, in a way that programming language can. It's just a way that we structured our HTML. So that's what it is. How it works. When the web pages load, the browser creates a DOM representation of the page, passing HTML and constructing a tree-like structure where each element becomes a node. So anytime you load your page, so if I refresh this particular page, the first thing that the browser is going to do is to pass every element in your HTML file and create this DOM. Because without this DOM, we cannot display. So if you are reloading like this, and nothing is showing on the screen, so what it's trying to do is that it's trying to create the DOM. Because the DOM is basically what you are going to show in the browser. So anytime you visit a website, for example, and then you see something blank, and then suddenly you see the content, so that means browser is trying to create a DOM. So when the web page loads, the browser creates a DOM that is used to represent the HTML. And when we talk about parsing, it's just like the different ways. So if you have a CSS file, for instance, it's going to get that CSS file, it's going to apply different styling and all that. That means it's trying to pass your page. So that's how it does. And every element becomes a node. So this body is a node when it comes to DOM. This div is a child node. So it's a child node of this body, but itself is also a node that can have another node inside of it. So every element is just treated like a node. And why is it important? They don't allow developers to dynamically interact with and modify the content, structure, and style of web page using JavaScript, enabling dynamic and interactive web experience. So today, we said we are going to talk about web interactivity. So DOM is that thing that allows us to manipulate the content of the website. So DOM is like an interface. So the interface between your code that you are trying to run, that's your code, and the browser. So DOM is what separates the two of you. So for you to manipulate anything that is being displayed on the browser, you need to interact with the DOM. So that's what they mean by interface. So when you hear of an interface, that means it's the gap that bridges the connection between the code you're writing in JavaScript and the content that is being displayed on browser. So just this is another visual representation. So this is window. Window is just the normal window on your system. It has nothing to do with HTML. But there is documents. So the document itself is, so this is HTML, right? This is like the IS tag. But this HTML is also being displayed in the documents. So this document that you see here, where is this? Okay, this document that you see here is like the parents of this HTML. So when you want to do anything on the website, as you see later, you will see us we write document dots. So that document is like an object that gives us access to different methods that we can use to manipulate any of these divs. So this is still the theory. We are going to see how all of this work in action in a bit. I just want you to understand the idea behind them and why it is important or why we need to use it. So here's how it is structured. In the header, you have meta, you have title, you have link. Those are children of edge. And then in the body, you have div, you have script. So script is what is going to load your JavaScript file. Inside of the div, you have image, you have div, you have I. So these four elements, they are siblings because they are on the same hierarchy. So when they say, oh, two elements are siblings, that means they are on the same hierarchy. They belong to the same parents. So they have the same parent. And since they are both from the parent of this div, so that means they are siblings. And this div and script, they are also siblings because their parent is the body. So how does JavaScript interact with the DOM? So the document object model is an interface between all JavaScript code and the browser. So this is browser, this is your JavaScript code. So when you want to do anything on the browser, you want to change the content that is being displayed in the browser, or you don't, that will now take your request and like make something happens on the browser. So through DOM, we can make JavaScript interact with the browser by creating, modifying, and deleting elements, setting style, classes, and attributes, and listening and responding to events. So all of these things are what we are going to be doing one by one. We are going to see how we can create elements through JavaScript. We are going to see how we can modify an element. That means we are changing something. So we might want to change the text that an element contains. So an element has a p tag and it says my paragraph. You can change it to your paragraph. JavaScript, you can change the style of an element. We can add classes, you can add attributes, and we can listen to events. So why does JavaScript interact with the DOM? JavaScript can interact with the DOM to access elements. So let me show you what that looks like. So inside our body, I already created this HTML file, nothing here for now. So just plain HTML file, and I created a JavaScript file as well. I've shown you how you can import your JavaScript file into your HTML last week. So this is the script, and then I'm importing it. So I'm just going to write something on the screen. So H1 uh JavaScript for web interactivity, right? So let's say we want to get access to this particular H1. So what we can do is we can come to our JavaScript file here. So I'm going to say const. That means I'm creating a variable which is constant. It's not going to change. So document.query selector. So I'm going to do H1. So you can actually select an element two different ways. You can select an element by the tag name, which is for this one, it's H1. If it's div, you write div. You can also select an element by its class name. So for instance, if this has a class name of my header. So if you want to select it in your code, it's going to be something like, just like you do in CSS, dot my header. So that means you are trying to select it. So let's say I'm just going to quickly console it so that we can see if we actually select that element. So if you go back to our website, I'm going to close this. So if you go back to our site, we see that H1, JavaScript for web interactivity. So, and if you select it, if you go to your console, you see that header. So I class. So that means we are selecting that element correctly. So let's assume that we can also access an element through ID. So if this has an ID of header, so if you want to access it in your JavaScript, it's going to be, instead of dots my header, it's going to be hash header. So just like the way you select inside of CSS. So if you go back to your browser and you try to refresh, sorry, hash header, ID of header. So you can see it here. It has selected that element. So now that you have selected that element, the next thing that you can do is to modify the element. So that's how you can select element on the web page. You're going to do that a lot because when you want to modify elements, you want to change its color, you want to change its style, you might want to change its content. So you have to first select that element for you to do those things. So you can select it by the element name itself. For example, a div, but it's better to select through class or through ID because you might have different elements. So, and you want to perform an action on a specific element. So, and you have maybe like 20 divs on your website. So it becomes very problematic because it's going to apply that action on all your div. So when you want to access only one element, you just use class name or you use an ID. So once you access that element, so this is elements, we have accessed the header. So now we want to modify it. You can do different things. So you can change the text, you can change the attribute, and you can style it dynamically. So let's first change its content. So I'm going to do header dot text content is equals to, so in a string, so dot text content means this header, I want to access its content, that's its text content, and I want to change it to let's change it to this has been changed by JavaScript. So this has been changed by JavaScript. So when you go to your website and you try to refresh, you see this has been changed by JavaScript. Even though in your HTML, what you have there is JavaScript for web interactivity, but you are using JavaScript to change its content. So apart from text.content, you can also use header.inner uh, so you can use inner HTML. So that's if, for example, you have a div, you have a parent div, and then inside of that parent div, you have another div or you have another element. So you can use header.inner inner HTML to access that element. So let's assume that you want, instead of changing the content, you want to change the style. So you just use header.style dot, sorry, header.style dot dot background color. So header dot style dot background color. So if you go here, you see that the background color of that particular header is now blue. So that's how JavaScript access, like even CSS, background color is written like this, background dash color if you want to. So and then you do blue. But in JavaScript, we use camel case. So camel case is the first word, which is background, is going to be small letter all throughout. But the second word, that's another word, which is color. Instead of using this dash to connect it, you are going to use capital letter to first write it. So that's why you have that there. So we can do other things apart from changing the background color. We can do style.color and we can change it to white. We can do padding, we can do anything. So we can do text align, you can do a whole lot with style. So once you access the style, then this style elements allows you to change a lot of properties on that CSS. So this is, in short, this is how you can access an element on your web page and also modify that element. So you can change its content with header dot text, header dot text content. So, or you can change its style with style. You can also add attributes. I don't know if you guys talk about attributes when you were learning HTML. So attributes, so this class is an attribute of each one. This ID is an attribute. So title also you can, that's another attribute. This is my header. So that's the title. Not going to show on the web page, obviously. So if you go back here and you try to refresh, so it's not showing, but see it in your JavaScript. So you can do get attributes title. So you can now do, let me try. Let's first take a look at the attributes. So console.log. So this is my header. That's the attributes, right? So we can change that attributes. So here, before we console.log it, we can do header.attributes is equals to hello world. So when you go here and you try to refresh, in fail, oh, sorry. So if you want to set an attribute, instead of get attributes, you use set attributes. So when you want to set an attribute, you use set attributes, but when you want to get the contents or the value of the attribute, you use get attributes. So for setting attributes, you use set attributes. It's a method and it accepts two parameters. We talk about what parameters are last week. So the first parameter is the name of the attributes, which here is the title. So and so if you go back here now, you should see this is header elements. So that's the name of the attribute. So this is also how you can access an attribute and modify that attributes. So when you modify a content, you can modify it to change the text, you can modify it to change its attributes, and you can use JavaScript to style it dynamically. Everything that you are doing is still trying to modify a content. Are you guys following? If there's any questions, you are free to ask. Please let me know in the comment section if you are following, just so I can know we are on the same page. Like I said, the next thing is going to be building on this one. So if you don't understand it, it's going to be very difficult for you to understand. All right, thank you very much. So someone said they're following. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we might want to do when we interact with JavaScript is to react to users' actions. So we want to react to user action, and that's probably one of the most important thing. So when you have a button, when someone click on that button, you want something to happen. When someone over these elements, you want something to happen. When they over out, you want something to happen. So we can do that with JavaScript as well. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a button here. I'm going to call it button. So I'm going to quickly style it here, just an inline styling. So I'm going to access the button. So I'm going to give it a padding of 10 and 20% and a background color of blue. Yeah, that's fine. Let's quickly check that. Okay, so this is the button. So what I want to do now is, instead of just using JavaScript to change the content on the website, I want to be able to click this button to change the content. So it's JavaScript for web interactivity. When I click this button, I want this content to change to the button has been clicked. So, and we've talked about how we can modify contents on a web page through the DOM. But what we have not talked about is how to listen to click. So how do I know that this button has been clicked? So, and that is why we need to learn about users, that's why we need to learn about event listener. So there are different events that can happen on our websites. One of them is click. Another one is probably over. So when you over an element, we call it mouse over in JavaScript. So that means you are offering your mouse over these elements. So this is the title you see, as you can see. So the title is displaying, this is my header. So that's what title is used for. But when we over an element, that's mouse over, when we remove our mouse over an element, so that's mouse out. And there's also keyboard, so you can listen to keyboard press. So when someone press a keyboard, you can listen to what they press, you can perform certain actions based on it. So there are different things that you can do. You can listen to double click. So instead of just one click, you want to listen to double click. So that means the person has to double click before the event triggers. So you can listen to key up, key down, key press, submit, reset. There are different events that you can listen to. So for this particular one, I'm going to show you how you can listen to a click event. So back to our JavaScript, I'm going to give this button an ID just so I can access it. So I'm going to give it an ID of BTN, which is short for button. So if you come back here, I'm going to first select that like I need two elements for this thing to work. First, I need this button. And two, I need this element, this H1, because that's what I want to modify. So I'm going to select those two elements. So first is the button. So I'm going to post btn is equals to query selector. Sorry, document. Like I said, document is that parent of every element that give you access to different method. So this is not dot, it's hash because I'm using ID. So it has to be hash btn. That's how you select an ID. And then now I'm going to select that each one. Const contents. I don't know if I should call it contents. Document or query selector. Let me check for the name. So the name is header, ID of header. So I'm going to write header. So just to be sure that I'm selecting both correctly, you can just quickly log into console. So console is just that thing that allows you to, quickly see results as you walk along. Yeah, so you can see both elements. That means we are selecting them correctly. The first stage is over, which is accessing the elements. The second stage now is listening to events. So I want to listen to these events, and then the third stage, trigger an action, and then the third stage will be to change the content, because I want to only change the content after this button has been clicked. So the second thing is to listen to that click event. So the way you do it is you do btn, which is the name of that element, that button that you want to add an event listener on. So you do btn dot add events listener. So this be add event listener method accepts different parameter, but at least two parameter. It can accept three parameter, but most time you want to give it two parameter. The first parameter that you need to give that method is the event that you want to listen for. So like I said, there are different events that you can listen for. So there are click events, there are double click events, there are mouse down, there are pressed over. So you have to write that event that you want to listen for exactly. So in this case, you want to listen for click events. So that's the first parameter. Then comma. The second parameter is the function that you want to trigger. So I told you how to create a function last week. So you can create a function here, and you can create another function, my function, or instead you can create the function on the fly. So instead of creating the function and storing it in a variable, which is going to take a long time, so you can just create that function straight from this particular method with this. So this bracket is it's like the parameter. So in case the function wants to receive a parameter, but for this one, it's not going to receive any parameter. So then the arrow function and then a curly brace to write the content of the to write any action that you want to perform. So this piece of code, this line of code is what is going to listen for an event. And then anything that you write inside of it here is what is going to run, like what is going to trigger anytime you click on that button. So what we want to happen is we want to change the content of this header. So, and we've already talked about how you can change the content. So content dot text content is equals to this button as okay was click. So this button was click. So you can do other things. You can change the style as well inside this thing. But let's first see the result of this. So when I go here and I refresh, nothing's happened, right? Nothing changed. But look at what is going to happen when I click this button. See, this button was clicked. So that means our event listener is working. So anytime, but once you click it, you cannot change the content again because as you can see, the content is already there. So even though it is firing, it's not going to do anything. But if you refresh again, we are back here. And then when you click, so it is working. So you can also change the style. Content dot style dot color is equals to red. So that means after this button is clicked, the color was initially black. I want to change it to red. So when you go here, you refresh. When you click on button, you see the content changed and the style was also changed. So that is how you can listen to events. So I said apart from click events, you can also do mouse over. So I'm going to do mouse over, mouse move now. So mouse over. So if you are unsure about what events to listen for, you can just do a quick Google search because to be very honest, especially one if you are just starting out, you cannot memorize all events in JavaScript. So there are tons of events that you can listen for. So all you need to do is to do a quick Google search, like or you can go to the JavaScript and documentation to see different events that you can use for different actions. So let's go back here. So you see that instead of clicking the button, immediately I over my mouse over it, what happens? The button was clicked. So that means our event was triggered. So if I want to do mouse out, so this one runs anytime my mouse goes to the button. But I don't want that to happen. I want the content to change only if I'm moving out. So that's what mouse out is for. So you see, when I over the element, nothing changed. But immediately I move my mouse away, the event was triggered. So that's how you can listen to events. You can listen to different events and then you can perform certain actions. So you first select that element that you want to add an event listener to. So then you do btn.add event listener, then the name of the event, then a function. So if you are unsure, you can create your function like this, like I said, const change contents. I'm going to name the function change contents is equals to, so I'm going to create an arrow function. So I'm going to copy everything inside here. Let's see if it's going to work the same way. So now if you do change contents, so that's our function. So this is our function here, this change contents. If you go back here, if you refresh, it works the same way. So if you realize, I told you that you need to call a function. If you create a function, sorry. But here we are not calling the function. We are just passing the function directly to our event listener. So if you want to call the function, we are going to do something like this. But this is not going to work. So so you realize that immediately I got to the page, the event has been triggered. It doesn't even wait for me to move my mouse over it. That's because I'm calling the function directly. So I should not call the function. What I'm just going to do is to pass that function to this event listener. So it's this event listener that will now call the function for us anytime this action, this mouse out, or any sort of event that wants to trigger is being called. So if you go back here and now it should work correctly. So nothing happens when I move my mouse out, our content change. So that's how you can listen for an event and like perform some certain actions. So add or remove elements. So you can add an element or deleting existing one. So since morning we've been talking about um how to how to add elements, like how to change the content of an element and how to change the style of an element. What if you want to add a new element to the DOM? So you don't want to modify the existing element, you want to create your own new element afresh. So how do you do that? So first I'm going to access our body. So our body is const body, I'm going to call it body, is equals to documents dot body, or you can use document.body, which is going to select that body, this body, because it's directly in the document, or you can use document.query selector. Let's just use document.query selector, and then the name of the element is what is body. So that means we've selected our body. So it is this body, this element. You know, body is an element. So if you go and console it, so if you console.log body, you want to see what is inside of body. So if you go back here, you see that body is an element that contains a lot of things. So everything is inside the body. The H1, the button, our script file, which is JavaScript, and then like this other JavaScript file that the browser automatically puts inside. So as you can see, it is injected by live server. So everything is inside body. So that means body is an element itself. So what we want to do now is to create an element. So I'm just going to do const new div is equals to documents. So anytime you want to do something on the web, you're going to use documents dot create. Sorry. So document dot create elements div. So that means we are telling this browser, oh, we want to create an element inside of this document called div. So this is the div. So if you check div now, okay, I'm just going to log div inside new div inside of our console, so we can see what new div is. So if you see new div, it's just an opening and closing tag. It doesn't have any content inside of it. So for us to add content inside of it, we can do new div dot test contents. So the same way we have been doing test content before, but now we are assigning it brand new test content. This is a new div. So if you go back here, we see that it's now an element. So how do we add this new div to our web page? Because now it's just there. But if you check our elements, you can't see anything like new div here. So it's just our header, our button, and our body. So we can now take these body elements. So we can take the body element and set body dot append child. So there are two ways that you can add a new element to a web page. So as you can see, there's append and then there's append child. I'm going to show you the difference between the two. But for now, let's just do append child and then new div. So if you go back here and I try to refresh, you see new div here. So, and if you go back to your DOM, you see that new div has been added. So here, so it's added to the bottom of your body tab because you are appending it to body. Had it been I'm appending it to something else, let's say there's no div currently on our web page, so I'm going to add a div here. So yeah, so inside of this div, there's EG tag. This is paragraph. So I want to add paragraph. Sorry. So inside of this div, I want to add this new element that we want to create. So under this paragraph. So instead of selecting the body, you will select the div. So once you select the div, and then you are appending the body child. So if you go back here, so you see this is paragraph, this is new div. So if you go back to the div, you see the paragraph and then you see the new div that we added to it. And you can also do these things in our we can do it in our event listener. So I'm going to create this div here before we write our function. I'm going to delete this. So, and then I'm going to move this to these two here. So when we are adding content, immediately the page load, we are going to create this new div. But it's only when this event is triggered that we are going to add content and append it. So if you go back here, it should disappear. So we are only seeing this is paragraph. So when we over the mouse and over out, everything is happening. We are adding new elements to the DOM, we are modifying the content, we are changing the style. So that's how you can add new elements to the DOM. So if you do, instead of append child, if you do append So it still work. It work the same way, but so if I do paragraph like this for append, so this is not an element. This is just text, like a string. So if I do like this, if I move, so it's still there. So that's append. Append will allow you to not only append an element, but also a string. So if you go back to that div, you see that this is the text that we append, and it doesn't have any tag, so it's just there inside of the div as a string. So if I had it been I use append child, so and I'm using string. If you go back there, you realize that it's not going to work. At least it should not. So we are not seeing that content. That's because append child only accepts elements. It doesn't allow you to append paragraph. So you can only append elements in append child. So if I change this back to new div without the string, of course, and then I save and then I go back here, and everything should be working the way they are working before. So that's that about how to add or remove. Oh no, sorry, we've been doing adding to content. We've not done remove. So if you want to remove, it's still the same way. So we have just one paragraph here. So I'm going to remove that paragraph. Immediately we over our mouse. So we want to add this new div and then we'll remove our paragraph. So I'm going to access that paragraph here. I like to do my accessing at the same place. So I'm going to access paragraph. So it's not a paragraph, it's just a p. So since we have just one p, this is going to work fine. So we want to append, then I want to remove. So it's going to be p dot, it's not, oh, sorry, it's paragraph dot remove. So, and then you're going to call it. So you're not going to pass anything to it. So it's going to remove that paragraph. So the paragraph is here now because we put this remove inside of our event listener. So anytime we mouse over and then it will not run out, but anytime we move our mouse because it's mouse out, then the paragraph will disappear and our div is going to be on the page. So that's how you can add new elements to your body tag. So you can now start thinking of the possibilities of how you can apply these different things to create a very interactive web page. So for example, when users move their mouse here, you want to show some content. You've seen a lot of websites where some pop-up is going to come anytime you move your mouse over one element, even before you click. So sometimes the styling is going to change. You've seen a lot of things. You've seen sliders that you click, the content is going to change. So it's just dumb manipulation and it's basic. So you are just accessing elements based on some events and then you are doing something. You are modifying content or you are removing content. So that's how it is being done. Are you guys still following? Okay, so like in modifying content. So like I said, if modifying content is just like changing the text in an element, so you can also modify an element in terms of changing its style. So for example, so that's for the person that asked this question. Let me try to explain. So I'm going to comment all of this out. So if you go back here, we have this JavaScript for web interactivity. So modifying just means you are changing something. So that's what we mean by modify. So what you can change is you can change this text. You can change its style, like its color. You can do a whole lot of things that you can imagine on this particular element. So, and I said that for you to change its content, for you to modify its content, what you would do is select that particular its content. We name it content. So content dot text content, and then is equals to, that means you want to assign new content to it. So this is a header. So if you go back there, you see this is a header. You've modified that particular header. So, and I said you can also change its style. So content dot style dot style dot color. This auto completion can be a pain in the eye sometimes. So yeah, so that's color. So that means you want to modify its color. Oh, sorry, I supposed to write star, but star. Okay, so now the style should change. So you can do anything. You can modify different aspects of an element. So that's what I mean by modifying. So that's how you modify. Okay, you are following. Thank you very much. So that's what you can do with DOM when you interact with the DOM. So you can then take this knowledge and like try to think of creative way you can apply everything together to do some cool things on your website. So if you go to any website from today, you are no longer just a user. You should now be thinking in terms of front-end development. So if you see a cool animation, maybe like you happen, so you should be thinking, oh, how can I do this? How do they do this? So that's like the way you should interact with websites henceforth. So that's what is going to also help you in terms of thinking. Because when you start building your website, you need to start thinking of what are the interactivity that I can have on my website. And the best way is to like check other people's website, see what they are doing, and try to uh, replicate the same thing on your website and maybe even improve it. So let's move on. So what are animations and user interactions? So we've talked about DOM basically. We've talked about how to access elements in the DOM. We've talked about how to modify like elements in the DOM by changing its text content or its style. We've talked about how to add an event listener to our website. So different event listener, click, mouse over, key down. You can do any event listener. I can't show you everything, obviously, but you can always make your research. So, and we've also talked about how to add new elements and remove elements from our website. So now we are going to talk about animations and user interaction. So animation refers to gradual changes in an element's appearance or position over time. These changes can include movement, size, adjustments, color transitions, and more. So just like you say, animation is just modifying. So if I the only thing that can make you not to call this thing we did here, let me bring them back. So this one, so this, so you move, the content change, but it's not gradual. We are going to talk about how you can make it gradual. So instead of just changing vim, you want to do it over time. That's going to take like maybe 5 seconds or 10 seconds. That's what animation is. It's just like changing something. So changing the style, the height, the width, the color of an element on the website. So that's what they mean by animation. And you will use JavaScript to access it. So now that you know how to access them and change thing, modify thing, then the way that you do animation should be very easy because all you need to do is to access some element and change their property and then do it over time. So user interactions involve responding to user actions such as clicking a button, hovering over an element, or scrolling the page. So both works hand in hand. So animations and user interactions. So you want to animate users' actions. So when you click on something, you want to do some things. That means you want to animate some things. So animations and user interactions go hand in hand, and you're going to be thinking about the both of them together. So by combining animation with user interaction, developer can create engaging and responsive web experience. So you don't just create websites that are boring to look. You want to create websites that are very cool. That people, oh, this website is so interesting. Like when I'm moving around, I'm seeing different things. So for example, you go to some websites, as long as you are scrolling, you see content coming from left and right. The content are not on the page before. You just see them popping up from the top, from the left, from the right. So it's just animations, like accessing those elements, changing their position. You guys talk about position in CSS. So you talk about absolute position. So if you do absolute position and then at the initial stage, you set the opacity to 0, you change the position to probably left. And then as users scroll over that element or they scroll to that page, you want to modify that style again. So instead of setting the opacity to 0, you set it to 1, you change the position and then you animate it. So it look cool. Again, it's not something technical. It's just basic DOM manipulation and it's something that you can also do yourself, especially now that you understand how to interact with the DOM. Let's move on. So let's talk about the type of web animations. So there are CSS animations and transitions. So this is not a CSS class, obviously, but let's do something. So in CSS, there is what we call over. So if you over this button, you can apply over to it. So I'm not going to do, let me just do black. And then change the text color to white. So that means once I over this element, I want to change the color to white. So I'm going to just comment this JavaScript out because I want to explain what CSS animation is for now. So you do your mouse here, you go here, and but as you can see, it's not gradual. And when we talk about animation, we said it has to be gradual. So that's why there is what we call in CSS, I think it's transition. So it's shorthand property for the default transition property. So you can do all is 0.3 seconds is. So what this transition does, it animates your content. So I'm not going to put it on the over, I'm going to put it on the actual element. So once you add a transition to an HTML element, the first property is what exactly do you want to animate. So is it the over? So there are different things you can animate actually. So you can animate the over event, you can do a whole lot of things, but it's just good to just, you can animate the opacity. So opacity wants the item to show in its 100% form, or you want to make it opaque, so not to show very well. But you can add all. So that means any property you are changing on this particular element is going to be animate. The second property is the time. So how many minutes do you want that animation to last? You can put it at 1 second. So it's going to take a longer time. And then there is the last property is. So there are different property, and it's how do you want the animation to like be carried out? Do you want it to ease in or to ease in out to ease out? I suggest like I would encourage you to try to play around with those different methods to see what they actually look like and how you can apply them. For now, I'm just going to go with ease. So it's just the way the animation is going to look, basically. So if we come back here and we over this button, so you see the button. So instead of changing drastically, so let me just first comment this out. And you see that over events, it's changing to black immediately. Pam, pam. But if you add this transition method, so instead of just changing, so it's gradual. So it's changed to black, and then when you move again, it's changed. So it's taking time. It's taking 1 second between changing to black and changing to. If you want to see it very well, you can put it in 10 seconds. So it's going to take a longer time. So now you see it's trying to change. It will change to black, and then when you move your button again, it's going to change to blue. It's going to take long. Of course, you should not do something that's going to take long. So 5.5 seconds is good. That's like 500 milliseconds or something. So this is good. Or even though 3 seconds, you don't want your animation to be slow. Yeah, animation should be there, but it shouldn't be too slow. So that's it. So now you can think of how like different things that you can do on your website. You want to animate something. So maybe something is not displayed very well. So for example, opacity, like I said, opacity is 0. So and when you over, you want to set the opacity to 1. So I'm not going to make it 0 so that we can at least see the button. So we can do 0.3. So when you go here, you see that the button is no longer showing very well. But when you mouse over it, it's not showing. But it's not showing suddenly. So it's take time. So that's what we mean by CSS animation. So you can combine this with JavaScript to do a lot of cool things. So that's CSS. So we see transitions and we see keyframe. Keyframe is also another CSS property that you should take note. So instead of this transition that happens, it doesn't have as much flexibility. But with keyframe, you can decide what is going to happen at every point in time. So maybe the animation is going to happen for 1 second. So no, let's say 10 seconds. At 3 seconds, what do you want to happen? You can change the element to blue at 3 seconds. At 6 seconds, change the background to green. At 10 seconds, then you change it to white. So when I move over it, all those things are going to run subsequently, like one after the other. So that's what you can do with keyframe. It's also another CSS property that you can use to animate your website. So these animations can be triggered using JavaScript events such as over, click, or page load. So instead of using over here, like this, you can, like use JavaScript to do this animation. And I'm going to show you how in a couple of seconds. But yeah, let's talk about JavaScript-based animation. For more control, JavaScript can be used to create animation dynamically. This is useful for moving elements smoothly across the page, creating events like fading, sliding, and bouncing, animating elements based on user action, such as scrolling. We've talked about how to animate, like how to we've talked about how to listen to events and perform some certain actions. So what you can do with JavaScript is that you can listen for an event and then perform some certain animation using CSS. So it's CSS and JavaScript all together, because again, CSS is the one that is doing the styling. So if you want to modify anything, you are still using CSS. So you have to know how to combine CSS property with JavaScript event listener in order for you to add this dynamic animations. Are we still following? Is there any question? Please let me know in the comment section if we are following, so that I can know that I'm not just talking to myself. Are we following? Okay. Thank you very much, Adiola. So we are following. Let's move on. So that's how you can combine JavaScript. So instead of having this, you can create a class. So this, instead of having over, you can create a class. Let's say dots, dots animation, right? So, and in JavaScript, you can now come here. I'm not going to do this. I'm just going to do this. And then in our event listener, I'm going to comment out the event listener as well. So I'm not going to change any content or do anything. The only thing I want to do in this event listener is I've already created this class animation, and I change the background color, change a whole lot of things, right? So I want to now dynamically add this class, because I'm not adding the class to the button right now. The button is just here. So I want to add the class anytime that button is clicked. So let's see if we can try to do that. So I'm going to get access to that button, which is btn dot class list. So that means you are accessing the class list of btn. You can do so many things on that class list. You can add. So that means you want to add new class list. You can remove. That means you want to remove a particular class from an element. So an element can have 10 class and you want to remove one of them. So you use remove. You can add toggle. So toggle means if this element has this class, remove it. If it doesn't have this class, add it. So that's the one I'm going to use. So I'm going to do, so let's check the name of that class that we created here is dot animation. So I'm going to do I'm going to do animation. So I think it should be like this. So let's see if this is going to work. So I'm going to remove the opacity. No, let me just leave the opacity. So we are, I don't want to use mouse out. I want to use click, so that I can show you what I'm trying to do very well. Because toggle is going to work better on a click. So you see, if I click again, so I want you to check these elements on the right side here and check what happens to the DOM. So immediately I click this button, you see this class is like it's shining. So that means we are changing something in the class. So the class is as animation now. So when I click it again, animation is removed. So nothing is in the class. So if I add it again, animation is added. And we can have more than one class. So had it been this button already has a class. So I'm going to add one class now. Class let's just do BTN primary. So it doesn't matter. I just want to show you that when you have more than one class. So if you click on it, so it adds animation to the class. It doesn't touch those other classes. So and then when you click again, it remove animation, but the other classes still exist. So when you want to add some cool things, you can create a class CSS class and then add a lot of styling that makes sense. So you can then add those class dynamically by listening to events. So when user hover over something, you want to show them. You can use opacity, you can use color, but make sure that you are adding this transition property. So this transition property is what is going to smoothen the experience. So it's going to make it look smooth. So it doesn't just happen once, it happens over time. So yeah. Then there are library-based animation, e.g. Zap and anim.js. So I think I use anim.js. There are other ones as well that are libraries that you can also check out. So they already created different classes. So for example, if you want to fade out an element, they already have a class and set up everything. So all you need to do is to connect that library to your project, and then you can read their documentation to get access to it. So it's very smooth. So when you see a lot of advanced animations that are so complicated, most time we make use of libraries to achieve them. So because it can be very boring and tiring to write a lot of CSS class for different elements on your web page, but those library already create an abstraction, so they've done it. So all you need to do is to access certain elements on them and then use them. So let's look to conclude the class. We are going to take a look at the common web animations that you are going to see on website. And I want you to look out for them as well. So when you are scrolling through website from today, again, like I said, don't just scroll because you are scrolling. So try to learn as well. So when you see something cool happen, so you, oh, how do they achieve this thing? So that's how you start thinking like a programmer. You don't just, like do like other users. You are no longer other users, you are now a potential front-end developer. So you should start thinking like one. You should start seeing websites, not just from a user perspective, but from a developer perspective. So that's how you learn. So over animation response when the user move their mouse over an element. Example include changing color or background events, enlarging image or icon, revealing additional content. So I don't think I have an image here. So another thing that you can do is, like I said, you can create a class like this, and you can set, if for example you have an image and the height is 100%, 100 pixel, you know what a pixel is, width is 100 pixel. So you can create, no, that's not what I want to do. So you can create a class and then you change the height of those elements. So you can now change the height to height to 200 pixel, width 200 pixel. Yeah. So you change the height to 200 pixel, you change the width to 200 pixel so that you cannot dynamically add that class anytime user move their mouse over an element. So for example, you've seen it a lot of time. Let me try to refresh. You see a website where you hover over an image and then the image will become bigger when you hover it so that you can see it very well. Immediately you move your mouse away, the image becomes smaller again. So that's how you can achieve it. It's just basic CSS and JavaScript. So you add class, you remove class. You can do a lot of cool things with this over event. So that's how they used to do it. Revealing additional content as well. So when you visit a website, you've seen frequently asked questions. So there's going to be the questions and then there's going to be answers. But the answers are not always visible. So it's only the question. So when you click on the question, then the answer will now show. So it's basic HTML, basic CSS and JavaScript. They are using click events. So you have that questions, you add a click event listener to it. So anytime that click event listener is triggered, you want to show the content of answer. So answer is like a paragraph. You just access that answer and then you set the display to like you set the display to like a block or a flex. Initially, the display will be set to none. We've talked about display in CSS. So that's how they can achieve those cool animations. Button click animation. Button can animate when when clicked to provide feedback to user. Example include a shrinking or expanding event when pressed. So for example, you can have a button like this. So yeah, so this is one. You see that the button becomes big immediately I click on it, so that user will know that, oh, we've clicked on this button. Oh, it doesn't have to be this big. So it's just something like, just like you add like 1 or 2 pixels just to give that visual feedback that, oh, something has happened. Again, we are talking about web interactivity. So you want to make it interactive. When they click a button, they should be able to know that, oh, I've clicked a button. So that's how you can do it. A ripple event spreading from the click points, changing text or icon dynamically. So when you click on the button, when you're trying to access a website, when you click on the button, so instead of the content of the button, you see something like loading. So it's something, so here like this, you can do btn dot test contents loading. So this is something that you see a lot of time. You can add a loading spinner, but I'm not going to do that. Loading spinner is just that ranch something that will be circling like this anytime you are trying to access a document. So if I click, you see loading. So that means if you are trying to submit a form, for instance, when user click on that button, but you are trying to do some back end things, so you are trying to maybe verify their details. So you need to let them know that, oh, I already understand that you've clicked this button, we are doing something on it. So what you can do is that you can change the text of the button to loading, or you can display a spinner, something that is run that will be circling, just so that you can know that, oh, something is actually going underground. So that's how you can do those simple animations. So sliding and fade events. This event creates smooth transition when appear or disappear. Sliding animation, content moving from the side when needed, e.g. side navigations menu. So you see a lot of side navigations menu. When you click on them, uh, let me try to show you one. Okay, because of time, let me just try to explain. When you click on them, so what happens is that they disappear. So just like the developer console disappear, but it's just that they didn't add transition to it. I didn't mean you added transition. So instead of disappearing suddenly, it's going to move to the left in like 3 seconds or like 300 milliseconds. So the way you can achieve that is very simple. With CSS, you just need to think, how can I achieve that? So you can create a width for the button. So when this button is clicked, this element should have a width of 300 pixels. So when the button is clicked again, that means you are using toggle. You want the div to have a width of 0 pixel. So I'm going to animate these changes in 3 seconds. So when the button is clicked, you see the div moving from the left to its 300% width, and then when it's click again, it's moved back to 0 pixel. So that's how you can do side-in animation in an animated manner. So and then fade in and fade out. So you can use an element to gradually appear or disappear. So let's try to do that here. Uh, so we are not doing that. So the way you can do that is setting opacity. So I'm going to, so this header, what's the name of that header? It's H1. So I'm going to access that H1 now. H1, and then I'm going to do opacity of 1. So that means it's displaying very well. I'm going to do transition all in 3 seconds. But once I click on this button, I want to access that, what's the name? It has an ID of header. Yeah, that's an ID of header. So I'm going to ask that header. So I name it content. So here I'm just going to do contents dot stack dot opacity is equals to 0. So let's see what is going to happen. I think it needs to be in a string. I'm sure. Let's just see if this is going to work. So you see what happened. So check, I want you to concentrate on this JavaScript for web interactivity and see what is going to happen anytime you click this button. It's not going to disappear immediately. It's going to disappear slowly. So you can even make it more feasible by changing the time. Again, I told you, when you want to make that animation to last long. You just need to change the time here. So when I click that button, you see it's disappearing slowly. So that's what they mean by fade in and fade out. So fade in means it's appearing slowly. So from 0 opacity to 1 opacity, you can make it like you can make it move through that journey like 3 seconds or like 5 seconds so that it's slow. So it's just to give that cool effect to your website so that something just doesn't appear boom boom. You want users to be able to have a feel of, oh, this is a very cool and nice website. So that's how you can do that. Scrolling animations activate when users scroll down to a web page. Example include content sliding into view when reaching a certain section, image or text appearing gradually as the user scroll, progress bar filling or based on how far the user has scrolled. So you can listen to a scroll event on your documents. So like we can listen for a click event on an element. So you can listen for a scroll event on the document. Like I said, this entire page here, that's the document object model. So that's why anytime you want to access a method, you are saying document dot add document dot query selector, document dot something. So you can also do document dot add event listener. So and then you will now do scroll. So here you can do scroll. So that means anytime this document is scroll, like it is scroll like this, you want to do certain things. You want to show content or disappear content. So that's how you can do that. Um, yeah. So and loading animations. Loading animations keep user engaged while content is being loaded. Common example include spinners or progress bar, skeleton loader, text or image fading in gradually after loading. So these are a little bit advanced, but you've seen spinner or progress bar in a lot of websites. So when you're trying to access a particular resources, maybe you are trying to log in your details. So you see spinner, it's loading. So if you go to some websites, I think LinkedIn, especially on their mobile app. So when LinkedIn is loading, it has this skeleton loader. Skeleton loader is a structure that look exactly like the content that is going to be displayed, but no text is showing, just like a skeleton. And then it's going to have like gray color, and then it's going to be animating smoothly. So that's what they mean by skeleton loader. So it's going to look exactly like the content that is going to be displayed, but it's not the content. So it's just a placeholder so that when the content you are trying to access arrive, it is then going to replace that skeleton loader. So you can achieve all those things with JavaScript. Text or image fading in gradually after loading. So if you are getting an image and you don't want to switch suddenly, you want them to fade in. Like we talk about opacity, so you can use opacity to achieve that. So that's loading animations. So if you are creating a website and you're trying to like make and you're trying to like connect it to a backend. Let's put it that way. So you're trying to connect it to a backend, you are trying to submit a form. So it takes time. So it's not something that is going to happen immediately because you are sending a request. So that moment where you are making that request and the time that the request is going to be fulfilled, you have to engage your users. So you have to do something. And what you can do is to use these loading animations. You can use a spinner or a progress bar. You can use a skeleton loader, or you can display text or image. So something like I'm doing here. So let's assume there is form on the web page here. Once I click this button, it's going to loading. That means I'm loading your request. So and once the loading is complete, I'm going to display the output on the web page. So that's about loading animation. So in conclusion, so web animations are more than just eye candy. They enhance user experience by providing feedback, guiding attention, and adding personality to interface. So web animations are not something that you just do for the fun of it, right? You do it because they are important. You don't want your website to be boring. You want to constantly give feedback to user. So once they click on an element, you have to let something happen. Once they move their mouse, once they press certain keys, you have to let something happen. When they resize their window, so there's another event listener called resize, I think. So when user resize their window, something like this, you want something to happen. Maybe, oh, this website cannot display on this screen. You can do anything. You can do so many things with animations, just combining it CSS and JavaScript together. And then when used thoughtfully, animation can improve usability, engagement, and storytelling on the web. So you want your website to be so engaging that users will feel comfortable using your website. So if you have a website and you are providing certain service, so let's say you have an e-commerce website, there are probably tons of e-commerce websites out there, but user experience is very important. So if your website is very easy to use, it is intuitive. So users don't have to, oh, how do I make order? So once they click, there's instruction everywhere. Once they move their mouse over something, there's tooltip. Tooltip is probably when you move your mouse over something. Let me try to show you if I can see that. It's not here. Okay, so when I move my mouse over this chat icon, you see chat alt H. So that is done with JavaScript. Like I said, so that content is being displayed dynamically with JavaScript. So if you have a website and you want it to have good user experience, it's something that you can also include here. So once user move their mouse over something, you should be telling them what that thing is doing before they even click it. So that's a very good user experience and it's improved storytelling. Always aim for purposeful, accessible, and performance-friendly animation. A lot of people usually do too much when it comes to animation because animation is cool. You just bombard your website with animations, everything animation. I scroll here, I'm seeing animation. I want to click a button, the button is dancing around the page. It makes it even more difficult for me to use the website. So as long as you are using animations to increase storytelling, to make your website accessible, you also have to be moderate about it. Don't use it too much, right? Use it in moderate so that it can achieve its intended purpose. Interaction is at the core of modern web experience. Pair it with animation to create intuitive, delightful user experience. We've talked about the difference between interactions and animations. So interaction is I'm clicking this, something changes. So that's interactions. Animations is just the pace at which it changes. So it's a gradual process. It doesn't just change, it changes slowly. So that's what we mean by animation. And user interaction is just you responding to user actions, just like we've talked about before. Good animation is invisible, great animation is unforgettable. So if you have a great animations, when user use your website, they will always remember it. And like I said, one thing that you need to take out of this class is one, you need to start thinking as a developer. So when you access a website, you're not just seeing it as a website, as a user, you are seeing it from the standpoint of a front-end developer. So you should be thinking, oh, how do they achieve this thing? What can I do to improve this thing if I'm the one that is building this website? So if you see a website that the animation is too much, you should know, this animation is too much. Maybe they should remove this, maybe they should remove that. If you see a website that doesn't have user interaction and the animation is boring, you should be able to tell and say, oh, if I'm the owner or if I'm the developer of this website, these are the things I'm going to do, these are the things I'm going to do. Because that's something that you need to work on so that in terms of creativity, you will start thinking more like a developer. And when you start building your website, you will have many ideas to work on, especially on how to include um, interaction and interactivity to your website. All right, so that's all for today session. Moderator, are you still there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Muhyiddin, for that wonderful session. Do we have any questions? So while we're expecting questions, the attendance will drop now. So let's fill them. So if you have a question, you can just raise up your hand, or you can drop them in the chat. So the attendance has been dropped. Let's fill in the attendance. And if you have issues filling the attendance, there's an attendance broadcast that gives you what to do. or instructions on what to do if you cannot fill the attendance. So let's follow that. So let's fill in the attendance, please. So our next class will come up next week, Saturday. So we'll be taking form validation, how we can use JavaScript to validate our forms. So let's try to come early. And for those of us that have friends that are also taking same track under McGeorge, let's try and remind them and also inform them of this live session so that they don't miss it. Although you can also watch the recording on YouTube. Recordings are always available on YouTube. So do we have any questions? Still no questions? So we are still expecting questions.
I want you to be happier. I want you to be happier. When the morning comes and we see what we've become. In the cold light of day, we're a flame in the wind, not the fire that we become.
So if you're free the attendance, feel free to exit the meeting. And important information will be passed to all of us later this week. Let's watch out for that too. The recordings are on YouTube. So just access the MarkTech channel on YouTube and you can watch it. But they're also available on the MarkTech platform. So there's a live class recording section on the MarkTech platform for web development. So you can access that there. I hope we've all filled in their attendance. We'll be ending the class soon. So since we did not get any questions today,
Recording stopped.
so thank you all for coming. We'll meet next week. Don't forget, so there will be an important announcement later. So let's watch out for the announcement. Thank you for coming and do have a nice day.
to be